Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
After last episode, I was certain. I had essentially made a deal in my head. I said, the unbridled optimism from last show is okay because, the fans deserve to have this and we deserve to revel in Detroit winning, those games and how good they looked and, the individual stats and being close to the top of the standings. But knowing they had the games against Ottawa and Calgary and it was a back-to-back and a big divisional opponent, a big part of me expected to come into this episode saying, okay, I know things went south from there, but let's not write off the season. But oh my God, have the Detroit Red Wings just found a way to step even harder on the accelerator episode after episode after episode. We were joking about it before we hit record here, Brad. We don't really know how to do this. Like we've been doing this show for near on 9 years now, and we don't know how to handle this much genuine, palpable good. Like this isn't just like a run good. This is the Red Wings are good.
We usually go goal by goal when recapping games. Don't know if that's an option time-wise anymore.
I'm like 30 goals. I clip them and I post them on Twitter, and I actually can't keep up anymore. I'm going to have to send Derek Lalonde a note and be like, hey, this is really great, but I'm either going to need a better computer or you're going to need to tell the guys to space them out a little bit more. Do me a favor.
He just sends you something that NASA designed, and you're like, oh, no.
Folks, the Detroit Red Wings are, at least playing like it, an absolute wagon right now. By all rights, this is the first time that the Winged Wheel podcast has ever experienced something like this, but I'll tell you, we are excited and this is a lot of fun. Welcome to the Winged Wheel podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, which, looking at my show notes in front of me, are a lot of things. The world of the NHL and lots more. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And Evan isn't here. He is currently sprinting straight to downtown Detroit with no shirt on. So he'll be back next episode, provided that he survives the cold.
Will he make it back by next episode?
It's an honorable death.
It's going to be at Evan's pace. We got to remember this.
That's exactly right. On this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast, we are going to be covering Detroit's two games. First, the huge divisional win over the Ottawa Senators and the win over the Calgary Flames, which just concluded. Those are two simple notes, but they include a litany of individual storylines that are worth talking about. We'll talk about where Detroit is in the Eastern Conference standings, who sits atop individual statistics, and lots more. We have news from Grand Rapids and other news from the NHL before we jump into overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know, Winged Wheel Podcast Night, the LCA. It's a partnered event between us, the Winged Wheel Podcast, and the Detroit Red Wings, where you buy a ticket, and not only do you get to go to the Red Wings game that day, which is on Saturday, November 4th, it's coming up fast against the Boston Bruins, but you also get access to a pregame live recording of the Winged Wheel podcast at Little Caesars Arena, featuring us, the hosts, plus Ken Daniels, the lead announcer for the Detroit Red Wings, and Chris Osgood, famed Red Wings goaltender and now Bally Sports Detroit presence. So, come for Ken and Chris and, bear with us as well. Not only do you get access to the game and the live show, you also get an exclusive custom Detroit Red Wings and Winged Wheel podcast co-branded beanie. The ticket to the game is discounted, and a portion of the proceeds from every ticket sold benefits the Jamie Daniels Foundation, which is why we do this. In case you were wondering, the Winged Wheel podcast, we don't make a penny from this. It's, in benefit of the Jamie Daniels Foundation. And you sit in Winged Wheel podcast specific sections. There's going to be merch, prizes, food and drink for you to buy, and lots more. There are very, very, very few tickets remaining. So if you want them, get them fast. And the event is fast approaching. We're really looking forward to it. wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings or the link in the description to get your tickets. Secondly, if you want to support the Winged Wheel podcast and our ability to continue to produce the show, make it bigger and better, host Winged Wheel podcast nights at the LCA, and everything else to do with just, kind of expanding the Winged Wheel podcast content universe and fundraising for the Jamie Daniels Foundation, support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast to become a member of the so-called Dub Club. You get access to things like our official Winged Wheel podcast Discord. You get automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We are giving away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game this season. The vast majority of them are going to our Patreon supporters. And not only that, you also get access to our Patreon exclusive bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. So all of that and lots more, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast. Before we get into it, though, I do want to call out Ken Kal, Red Wings radio announcer. The Red Wings announced before the game today that he had to undergo a procedure after the Ottawa Senators game. He is recovering now and doing well, and we actually got a note from Ken Kal that he tweeted out. So happy that he's doing well, but he did undergo a procedure to address a medical issue. He's resting comfortably, they said, and obviously the entire fan base is behind Ken, wishing him a speedy recovery. So Bob Kaiser stepped in and joined Paul Woods and Daniela Bruce in the radio booth. But to Ken, the entire Red Wings community, the Winged Wheel podcast listenership, and all of Hockeytown is wishing you a peaceful, restful recovery, and we hope to hear you back soon doing the radio call. So all the best to Ken Kal. Let's start with the Ottawa game, Brad. So we all know the context for the Red Wings and the Ottawa Senators. And to me, this was a big game for a lot of reasons. I got some pushback on the notion that it was that big of a game because it was the fifth game of the year, and they're going to meet multiple times, and we're making a meal out of this. And I know I think Derek Lalonde even said, it's more of a media narrative than anything that it's that big of a game. But to me, I genuinely believed it because, one, Alex DeBrincat's return to Ottawa after, let's call a spade here. He forced his way out of Ottawa. Didn't want to re-sign there, asked for the trade. That is what it is. And Ottawa fans, I think, are justifiably annoyed by that. That annoyance is probably amplified by the fact that he's been on an absolute tear to start it with Detroit. Secondly, Detroit and Ottawa are at the same part of their rebuilds. They're both fighting for a potential wildcard spot, not only this season, but in future seasons as they look to be part of the next generation of Atlantic Division teams who are going to be perennial playoff contenders and cup contenders. And third, Detroit's own playoff hopes last year, which seemingly came out of nowhere, Ottawa was the one to thump them out in a back-to-back absolute stomping at the hands of Brady Tkachuk and the Senators in Ottawa. So all of that set the scene for Detroit, in my mind, for this to be a massive showdown.
Well, it's funny because even on the 32 Thoughts podcast that they released on, I think it was Friday, they called this the game of the year before the game happened just because of all the implications you just laid out. And it's worth pointing out, it's very, very rare for teams of, if we go back to last season, Ottawa and Detroit's caliber to have any game that means, well, let's be honest, anything, let alone the entire hockey world watching and, big hockey media types going, no, this game has a lot riding on it. I mean, at least as much as you can this early in the season.
Yeah.
And the narrative around this game, for anybody who listens to or reads any national writers, any national hockey podcasts, and a few of them, and one in particular, I remember I was listening to the day before the game, where it was the first time all season anybody even really brought up the Red Wings in any sort of positive context. They're like, hey, maybe the Red Wings are better than we gave them credit for. And, gave them a couple minutes of going, yeah, the Red Wings have been good this year. We'll see how they do against Ottawa. And then they got into Ottawa and did like a 15-minute deep dive into I wish I was exaggerating. I am a little bit, but not that much, about why Ottawa's, such a great team on the up and up. And here's all the positives, yada, yada, yada. Which is fine. I don't fault anybody for doing that because as someone who's covered the Red Wings for 8 years, I understand how irrelevant we have been. And this run here is the first true, are they good narratives they've had the whole time. But Ottawa was still getting the bulk of the attention, credit, whatever you want to call it. So not only was it critical for Detroit to go out and win this game because they get the 2 points. They're going to be battling for that playoff spot with Ottawa. Obviously, in the room, they needed to make a point to themselves. They needed to make a point to the Senators that, hey, we're not a fluke. This is for real. But now they have credibility. They beat Tampa. They beat Pittsburgh to that point in the season. They had some good wins, convincing wins. But nobody was really paying attention yet. Everybody circled the Ottawa-Detroit game. Detroit goes in, smacks them. I'm curious to see what the narrative come Monday morning is going to be now.
When the lineup came out and we got the news that Klim Kostner wouldn't be in, he tweaked something in practice. Derek Lalonde mentioned that a forward who wasn't Robby Fabbri left practice and lo and behold, it was Klim Kostin. And I thought, oh, that's rough, because after Ottawa came in and played Detroit in those 2 games last season like they were playoff games, and it included a physical dominating presence and, Brady Tkachuk shouting down the Red Wings bench, et cetera, I thought they're going to need all of the physical presence that they can have. And we know what Klim Kostin can bring. We talked about it last episode. But Detroit in every single way stepped up to that game. It wasn't perfect right off the bat, but, once they turned it on, it seemed like they turned it on in every kind of way that they needed to. The game opened up with a 1-0 lead from Ottawa at the hands of Jake Sanderson, but after that, it was Shayne Gostisbehere, who Larkin found in front on the power play, Prawn with the assist there, and then in the second period, Joe Veleno with a phenomenal pass from Christian Fischer. From behind the net, turning around, finding Joe Veleno coming in, the goalie looking the other way. That is the beautiful games type stuff. Like, I love goals like that, like tricky reverse direction kind of goals. Red Wings fans who have been fans for a little while now will think of the Henrik Zetterberg no-look between the legs back pass to Pavel Datsyuk, who buried it. Not quite the same level, but it made you think of it, and that was a fantastic play from Fischer, who showed off a little bit of his offensive ability, which Arizona Coyotes fans are keen to talk about. And Joe Veleno gets his first of the season. David Perron's in front, bangs home another one on the power play, this one from Dylan Larkin again, who was on one that game. Like, he was absolutely on one. And then Dylan Larkin gets one of his own from Gostisbehere, also on the power play. And then Joe Veleno made it 5-1 off of a great steal from Daniel Sprong and a fantastic pass. And Veleno made no mistake burying it. The game ended at 5-2. And, there's physical stuff to talk about in there, but the offensive performance in this game and the power play performance, it didn't hold. Obviously, today wasn't the same level of power play click, but the Red Wings power play at the end of this game, over the course of the first 5 games of the season, was 50%. They scored on half of their power plays. How many of those were negated by even getting their own penalties or like being short in power plays? They scored, it was a coin flip through the first 5 games. That was an outrageous man advantage performance over the course of the game.
It's funny to think that we're not that far removed from the fundraiser for the Jamie Daniels Foundation, where every power play the Red Wings didn't score, the total went up. Yeah. And they made it into the 40s.
It was like 41 or something like that.
It was 40-something power plays without a single goal.
Absolutely absurd. And it was automatic, too. Like, these were clinical goals.
That's the big thing that I've really noticed has been the difference this year. And on the Larkin goal in particular is where it really stood out, because they're doing things fast. And you can't do that unless you have better players. Like, it's not uncommon for power plays to use the bumper, and in this case that's Larkin, for, as soon as he gets some space, get the puck to him, see if he can get a shot off. When that puck came to Gostisbehere on the half wall, he didn't stop it. It was a one-touch pass right to Larkin. Mm-hmm. Just puck to Gostisbehere to Larkin. By the time Ottawa can even react to Gostisbehere getting the puck, Larkin already has it, and it's in the back of the net. That is not something we have seen from the Red Wings power play in years.
Yeah.
Like, we're going back to Datsyuk Zetterberg era stuff.
And that's part of that is Dylan Larkin finding another level to start the season.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk 100%. About that a lot. And part of that is DeBrincat, but the Gostisbehere goal, that's not with DeBrincat. That's Larkin finding Gostisbehere in front. That's Larkin finding Perron in front. And he's always been good at this stuff, but yeah, it's a whole different level this season. The power play, I think, now sits second in the league, just behind New Jersey. Detroit's scoring at 39.1%. New Jersey's still at 42.9%. So today's game against Calgary brought it down a bit, but oh no, not 39%. Like, that was an outrageous offensive performance by Detroit against Ottawa specifically, all season so far, but against Ottawa specifically. Besides being dominated physically last year, part of it was you need to put goals on the board. A part of our conversation last episode, Brad, was, what's Detroit going to do this season, or what we were projecting was, what are they going to do this season in terms of scoring goals? To start the season, they've made that whole conversation look absolutely foolish, and I'm happy to call it foolish so long as the scoring streak goes. Detroit, through 6 games, has 30 goals, which is well clear of the next best in the NHL. They're scoring at 5 goals per game. Just absolutely nuts. So they dominated Ottawa that way. Ottawa, I think, still outshot them. Like, Detroit's scoring efficiency was really high that game, so I'm sure Ottawa would have loved fewer penalties. I'm sure Ottawa would have loved some better goaltending, but Detroit put the goals on the board, and they scored when it mattered. Something I really did like, though, Michael Rasmussen. stepped up multiple times. He got into it, but, and the entire team was getting into it. I think DeBrincat and Tkachuk were jawing at each other quite a bit at one point, but, there was a point late in the game where DeBrincat or Tkachuk was going after, I should say, Mo Seider, and Rasmussen immediately stepped in and went, no, not him, me. And they fought right away. And it was more of like both of them threw one or two punches than just two Goliaths throwing each other to the ice. But I love that from Michael Rasmussen. I think that it demonstrates how important his physical presence, like that side of his game, is to the team.
Yeah. And for 5 minutes, not a bad trade-off on the ice as well, getting Brady Tkachuk off the ice for some key minutes.
Yeah, definitely. Like, not that Rasmussen isn't
valuable, but he's not Brady Tkachuk.
Getting Brady Tkachuk off the, like, that stops him from being able to turn around the game at that point. So that was huge for Detroit. It was a divisional win. It, at the time, put them at the top of the Eastern Conference. It was, in spite of having Klim Kostin out, who would have been the physical presence that you might have expected to get his nose dirty that game. And it was a complete turnaround from the narrative that we saw at the end of last season. And this mattered for Ottawa and their fans, too. Like, they were booing DeBrincat like crazy, as is their right, and I think they were justified in doing. But that was a statement game from Detroit, and if they went in and lost that game, I wouldn't have said anything like, oh, it's all over, or, this whole thing was a mirage and they're not going to sink back to the bottom. But it would have been disappointing because all the wins leading up to that game would have been really nice, but that's the one that you would have had circled on your calendar to start the year, and Detroit did not falter 1 second.
The room knows what the narratives are, and in a lot of instances, those narratives are bigger in the room. The players who were there last year, they don't forget those games.
No.
They know. They remember.
Yeah.
That one was extra sweet for them.
And Derek Lalonde is thinking about this too. Like, Newsy's thinking and talking to the guys saying, are you really going to let Brady Tkachuk punk you again? Or are you going to punch him in the mouth and cross-check him in the hip and piss them off and win in their barn? So Detroit walked away from that one with the win, and I thought, okay, they have a back-to-back with travel against Calgary now. I know Calgary has had a little bit of a road stretch too here, but 4 straight wins. There's no scheduled losses, but sometimes there are kind of scheduled losses, and you think of regression to the mean, and when's that going to come for Detroit? So I thought, I'm not sure how they'll do against the Flames. Well, they scored one more goal than they did against Ottawa, and they ended up winning 6-2. Evan, I think, put in the Discord, the Winged Wheel Podcast Discord, he's like, I don't know what happened to this team and who these people are who have replaced them, but like, they just are scoring and scoring and scoring. Again, the conversations that we were having preseason, as of right now, look foolish because they are firing on all cylinders. I don't want to say I don't understand it. We do. We're watching it. We're talking about it right now, but even the biggest Red Wings optimist would not have predicted this start for Detroit.
I thought we all had to bring it penciled in for, wasn't it the second game of the season? I tweeted he's on pace for 123 goals. I say he does it. Why would I come off that opinion? Why would any of this surprise me? We saw it right away.
There's been nothing to say that you're wrong so far. Speaking of DeBrincat, he opened scoring with Justin Holl getting the assist. That was his first Red Wings point, and Lucas Raymond getting the secondary assist. Fun fact and a little bit of a spoiler, those two both with 3-point nights for the Red Wings. Nice to see Lucas Raymond's efforts rewarded. I think, yes, DeBrincat and Larkin have been getting the scoring, but I think Raymond has been factoring in quite a bit on that line. I don't want to say it's all just, PDO or whatever, and he's just been unlucky, but he has been playing well enough to have had more points, especially in the Ottawa game. I think he and Rasmussen were due for way more on the board than what showed up for them. So for him to have a 3-point night was key. And for Justin Holl, too. Like, we were talking pre-show, save for Jeff Petrie, who's had a rough start to the season for the Red Wings and was scratched actually for this game. The entire Red Wings decor, nobody's been terrible other than that.
No, they've by and large been acceptable to good.
Yeah. After that, Joe Veleno continued 3 goals in 2 games. So he got 2 against Ottawa, and he scored his 3rd by taking a deflection off of a bench shot. And that was Hull's 2nd assist. And then Dylan Larkin made it 3, where it was an outrageous shot from the left side. Larkin loves scoring like that.
Oh, high, short side, blocker side. That's his sweet spot.
Yeah, right over Vladar's shoulder. I believe it hit Vladar's shoulder even.
Yeah, I glanced it.
As a shooter, Brad, like, how hard is that shot streaking down the left side at a tight angle?
I would say I wish I was a lefty because it's way easier to go high blocker than it is high glove. The window he had there at the speed he did, and considering it was basically a catch and release, it's a hard shot.
Yeah. And he did a great job stealing the puck, feeding DeBrincat, and DeBrincat fed it back, and that connection was awesome. Or has been awesome, I should say, to start the season. And then DeBrincat gets his second goal. This time, Larkin back to DeBrincat, Raymond factoring in. Raymond with a great pass, Larkin with a great pass, DeBrincat making no mistake. And at that point, he took the NHL scoring lead with his 7th goal of the game. Or not of the game, of the season, but it felt like his 7th goal of the game. Calgary got one back. Jake Walman got his first of the season from the point. Sprong passed it back. Perron won the faceoff. And then to close the game, Alex DeBrincat gets his hat-trick goal from Lucas Raymond and Justin Holl. And that was just... At that point, everyone was saying, oh my God, what is happening? How many times have we seen this already? DeBrincat's second hat trick at the LCA. The first one was as a member of the Chicago Blackhawks, so a lot better for Red Wings fans this time. But Detroit wins 6-2, and the storyline is the same as it has been a lot of the year. Detroit's best players showing up. DeBrincat keeps scoring. Larkin is still phenomenal. Holy hell. And again, the Red Wings at the end of this game sit atop the East, the entire Eastern Conference, number 1 in the standings. Boston has games in hand, but you can play the games you play. Alex DeBrincat leads the league in points and leads the league in goals at the time of recording right now.
Dylan Larkin's tied for the lead in assists, and Justin Holl leads in plus-minus. What is this reality? You scroll through the NHL stats page right now, and 4 of the first 5 categories you see are led by Red Wings.
And this was off. The Calgary game was not a good game in terms of power plays either. This was 5-on-5 scoring. They were 0 for 5 on the power play today. That's what they brought them down to 2nd in the NHL. It's all the signs of every single cylinder that you want to see firing offensively for the Red Wings is firing right now. Again, they have the firepower to do this. We knew that coming into the season, but to do it with this much pace and consistency to start the season is not something that anybody would have reasonably predicted. Now, I want to take a little detour here before we jump into the individual storylines on the Red Wings. After the last episode, and as we're covering the game, or other people in the Red Wings sphere are covering the games, something that I've seen come up quite often is, a response or a reply that says, "It's early. Don't get too excited. You're wrong to be excited by this, or to say that this is that fantastic. It's 5 games in, 6 games in, what have you." Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I don't think everyone's opinion is good. I sit across from someone whose opinions I almost universally disagree with. But in all seriousness,
everybody likes to be wrong. It's fine.
Well,
every once in a while.
I'm a Lions fan, and today's a bad day, so I'm feeling awfully wrong about that.
Why? There was no football games today.
That's right. Hey, we can agree on that. Yeah. Bills and Lions. You have that camaraderie.
Didn't play today.
But, folks who are saying that are going to get annoyed here for a second. I'm going to allow myself to get annoyed here for a second, which I don't do often, or I try not to do often. It is the laziest take in the world to say, oh, it's early, or don't extrapolate over the course of the season. Everyone knows. Everyone knows. We all know that. It is not some Oppenheimer deep-level mathematical calculation to say 5 games is fewer than 82. Oh, gee, thanks, bud. Who knew that? I thought the Red Wings had already won the Cup. We were drawing the parade route. Of course, everyone knows. How many times have the Red Wings started off poorly to a season? They can play the games that they've played. They've won them. They've won them in spectacular fashion. The individual storylines are all good. Their new best player is good. Their current, or their old best forward is, their captain is still playing fantastic. Their power play is humming. The fans at the LCA are absolutely electric. What do you want? People to be upset and sad the entire way through until you see them lift the Stanley Cup? Oh my God. We have covered terrible Red Wings hockey for so many years. You are not wrong to enjoy this. You can enjoy this and accept the fact that there will be regression at some point in terms of wins, in terms of DeBrincat goals, in terms of power play performance. Of course, it's all implied. Everyone knows. I promise you, people know that. I promise you, we know that. I promise you, people writing about the Red Wings know that. It's not a novel concept, but this is actually good. Hashtag actually good Red Wings hockey. It's not a mirage, and I don't care if they lose 10 straight after this. They're not going to. I don't care if they lose a bunch after this. It doesn't change the fact that this is good and fans should enjoy it. And of anyone who deserves to enjoy it, the fan base, my God, for what they've gone through over the past near decade, deserve to enjoy this. So if you want to be a Debbie Downer about it, by all means. But you are not some, wizard by saying, oh, well, it's a small sample size and it could come down. Oh, thanks, Tips.
You know who you sounded like?
You?
Yeah.
It's because I'm sitting in your usual chair.
That's my shtick to get mad about the Twitter reply guys.
The people online, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Even in this absolute happiest of times we've had in years and years and years. Like, imagine the personality type you have to be to have the Red Wings on the heater to end all heaters, and your only thought is, we can't be happy about this.
Yeah, like, if that's how you're, like, it's actually a sad way to watch sports. It's for entertainment. If this is your favorite team, enjoy them winning 5 straight games, being 5-1 to start the season, and scoring 5 goals per game.
And I know we talked about this before we started recording, but to those people, are the Red Wings going to play at a 5-1 pace for the whole season? No. Could it keep up for a few more games? Maybe. But here's the thing. If they start the season 7-1, 8-1, and the Buffalo's below 500 right now, Ottawa's hovering around 500, if the Red Wings play mediocre hockey the rest of the year, but they have a big enough head start, that could be the recipe for a playoff spot.
Yep.
These points in October matter exactly as much as they do in April. So if you create what is called a cushion, you can afford to blow some games in the middle of the season that maybe you shouldn't, and still get into the playoffs.
These 6 games count the same as the 6 games in January, count the same as the 6 games at the end of the season. It all matters. Every point matters. And yeah, like you said, Brad, there's a cushion. The Red Wings have now allowed themselves to have a few bad bounces, have an off night. If they have an injury that hurts them, it's not coming off of a losing streak beforehand. Like, this is the stuff. You can play the games you can play. You can get the points that you have. This is huge for Detroit. I would love to be at the end of the season and say, hey, our preseason conversations where we had Detroit 6th or 7th in the division, and we said their offense could score more and be around league average or just above, but it's going to take a big effort, and playoffs are really, really not likely. I would love to say we were absolutely wrong on all 3 fronts. I am looking forward to the Red Wings media team clipping all of our preseason conversations into this just highlight reel of how absolutely wrong we were about the 2023-2024 Red Wings. And what they've done to start has made it so those people who are saying, hey, playoffs, they are not crazy to hope for that at all.
To be fair, we had them ranked higher than literally everybody else.
Oh, God, it was universally
7th.
What you had said earlier in this episode and before we recorded, that even those who are the most down on the Red Wings are and the most want to skip over them, this is a national storyline right now. DeBrincat's homecoming to Detroit is a national storyline. Dylan Larkin finding a new level is a national storyline. And this is burying so much, like Shayne Gostisbehere playing fantastic hockey for Detroit, where people are already like, are they going to extend him? Ville Husso had himself a fantastic game on Saturday, and I didn't even mention that. Like, so many different parts of this team are clicking.
Well, this is the biggest storyline in the NHL, whether people want to admit it or not, because there's basically 4 teams running away from the pack right now, and a couple others who haven't played enough games to really get in the conversation. Colorado, Vegas, Boston, Detroit.
Yep.
Something here is not like the others.
Yep.
Anybody surprised that Colorado, Vegas, or Boston are off to rip-roaring super hot starts? Nope.
Well, I bet against Boston at the start of the year, which I told myself I'd stop doing, and that's why they're off to a rip-roaring start. But yeah.
I had them in a playoff spot. I don't remember where, but
yep,
whatever. Nobody's surprised. Nobody had Detroit going 5-1. And they didn't even, like, how many actually bad teams have the Red Wings played this year? Columbus, who are 3-2?
Mm-hmm.
Tampa, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, Calgary, Ottawa. These are not basement dwellers that they've been beating up. So, yeah, it's a storyline. And like I said, I am super, super curious to see what the national narrative is over the next few days. You know, I don't remember the last time I saw, you know, we love Pete. I don't remember the last time I saw Pete Blackburn tweet about the Red Wings, and he's calling him a wagon now with a giant picture of Dylan Larkin's ass.
Which all of us have saved on our phone from the pants commercial.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The hockey butt commercial.
Yeah. I'm surprised Crystal's never asked, but
Mel knew. We'll see how the rest of the month goes, and as we approach Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA on November 4th, they have Seattle on Tuesday, and
my God, that Winged Wheel Podcast Night is against the Bruins. That could legitimately be the game for first place.
Could be. It actually could be. They have Seattle on Tuesday. We'll be back with you next episode on Wednesday. But they are playing every other day. It's like Seattle, night off, Winnipeg, night off, Boston, night off, Islanders, and then they have a few nights off before they play Florida on November 2nd. So the calendar's full, and we'll see how they keep rolling here. And again, that's a hard pace to keep up what they've been doing, of course. But, I mean, first 6 games, actually could not have asked for better. Even the loss against New Jersey, like you think about their one loss, it's not like they were god-awful the entire loss. They had a really good start to that game. New Jersey was just a much better team. We're watching what Jack Hughes is doing right now, and this might be his
third in league scoring. Pedestrian.
Yeah. Not every team is fortunate enough to have the scoring leader and the points leader, but I digress. But that's what the Red Wings have upcoming, where, of course, every successive episode that's more hyped than the last is that much more fun. So we'll see where this goes. Let's talk about some individual stories here. I'm really happy last episode we talked about Joe Veleno and how good he's looked. And maybe the offense hasn't been there, but he's doing the right things, and you can notice him out on the ice because the offense came in the 2 games since last episode. So he made us look really good.
Yeah. Joe Veleno, when he gets it, he gets it. So hopefully, this is sustainable this time. We've seen him have some hot streaks before. We know he can do this at the NHL level. Just please let this be the season where it's consistent.
And it doesn't have to be at a level of 1.5 goals per game, of course, but just factoring in as scoring depth on the line with Perron and Sprong or whoever's there. That's all that Detroit needs. So when they have 3 goals in a game, they can, rely on their depth to get that 4th goal, which they'll often need in a high scoring NHL, or if the goalie's not showing up or whatever it is. So credit to Joe Veleno, has looked really, really good to start the year. Topping the East, I want to talk about the standings. Like you mentioned, Brad, they're up there with Boston. Boston has 2 games in hand, 8 points to Detroit's 10. So we'll see if they make those up. And well, like that team is, it was stupid for me to ever say, just because they lost 2 top centers, they're going to be bad. No, they're going to find a way to win, of course. And then Ottawa's in the 3rd divisional seed behind them. This is way too early to be talking about this, by the way. It's just because the Red Wings are at the top why we're doing it. In the Metro, Philly, New York, and Columbus, and then 2 wildcard spots, Toronto and Carolina. Tampa's tied with Carolina at 6 points. So Detroit finds himself topping the conference, and we talked about it just a minute ago, but yeah, they are among the top 4 teams in the league, and they are the best in their conference through 6 games. We'll see what Boston does. Philly can't, Philly has 7 points in 5 games, so at most they can get to 9. Detroit has been a top performer in the East to start the season, which, I mean, if you asked anyone to make an order for the Eastern Conference, no one would have put Philly and Detroit up there, which is funny.
Feels like 1997 all over again.
Good year.
Great year.
Yeah. But just a quick standings update for folks. Detroit's undefeated at home. 3 games only, but that LCA advantage is huge right now.
What was that stat the NHL posted? DeBrincat's had multi-goal games in each of his first 3 home games with his team, and that he's the first player to do that in over 100 years.
Huh. I heard that's pretty good. I love
he's the first guy to do it with a forward pass allowed.
Alex DeBrincat became the 5th Michigan-born player in club history with a hat trick, joining Jimmy Carson, Dylan Larkin, Justin Abdelkader, and Kevin Miller. Good company, especially Justin Abdelkader there. Everyone was expecting that. And then like you said, the No Place Like Home for DeBrincat, NHL PR posted this. Alex DeBrincat became the 2nd player in NHL history with 3+ points in each of his first 3 home games with the franchise, joining, as everyone knows, Harry Meeking in 1917-1918 season.
Is that meme account? Because that name is so close to being censored.
Is so funny. Anyways, yeah, that was those are the kinds of records that the Red Wings players are setting to start the season. Their power play. Obviously, this game going 0-5 isn't great, but after the Ottawa game being at 50% and now sitting at 39.1, what has made their power play this effective? What did you see in the Ottawa game that made it click that well? How much of it is just Larkin? How much is it different movement, different kinds of firepower? And what kind of regression or changes can we expect over the course of the season? Because obviously 50% isn't sustainable, and likely neither is 39.1.
The answer, the real true answer here is too obvious and too boring to talk about at length, but I'm still going to say it because it's the honest answer. Better players. The difference Gostisbehere and DeBrincat make on that power play unit is substantial, because not only are these two players who have all the natural offensive talent that we are all aware of, two of their biggest strengths is quick puck movement. They're always a step ahead. Again, I talked about it with what Gostisbehere did on the one Larkin power play goal. It's on and off his stick before Ottawa even reacts. Larkin is sitting in the slot with as much time as he needs. DeBrincat is also really good at those plays. We know we saw in the preseason how many times he sent it cross crease to Larkin for a goal. When you have guys who can shoot like Gostisbehere and DeBrincat on the flanks, but can also distribute the puck like those two can, it gives you a whole new depth and dimension to the power play. If we're going to talk strategy on the power play, what have they been doing different that I have noticed this year? There have been a lot more low to high plays. Mm-hmm. And I know Prashant has been one of the guys like smashing the table for Detroit to run more of this over the years, but this has been a theme where when that puck is below the goal line, it's a set play. It's not down there just for a recovery. They're using it as a strategy. They're using it as an attack point. Make the goalie turn. Make the defense turn. You know, if they're looking at you behind the net, they might not see the guy creeping up in the slot behind him or what have you. So aside from the obvious answer, that seems to be a huge change in how they've been running the power play.
And it's not low to high to always like a static guy in front. Like often you see Perron up there planting his skates, using his frame to push defenders out of the way, cause havoc, and he'll bang it home, or he'll pick up the smart rebound. But like you said, Shayne Gostisbehere streaking in from the top. Like it's a lot of dynamic movement in every single direction. And it almost frustrated listeners for a long time when we were, banging our fists on the table over the course of the years to say the Red Wings power play looks static. It looks slow. It looks like they're stuck in mud. They're stuck on the perimeter. They're making stupid attempts across seams that they're not opening up with their movement. And they're saying, well, what's needed? You can point out the flaws, but what's the change? One, like you said, it's better players. You can't execute the things that we're talking about without better players. And two, it's that movement. It is the generating of space. You have to execute really well. And when I talk about Dylan Larkin being on another level this year, he is executing at an unreal level. Not just shooting, but passing especially. I didn't even mention, tied for the NHL lead in assists, as I think you noted earlier, actually, Brad. But yeah, the whole thing is just, and they maintain pressure. And it's not just the first unit either. The second unit oftentimes will maintain pressure and generate a lot of really strong chances. You now have enough talent to have two at least pretty decent units in the top one. I mean, with what DeBrincat and Larkin are doing especially, just absolutely, what a turnaround based on the power plays of old that we've seen for Detroit. On the other end of things, Max Bultman was on Bally Sports Detroit today at intermission. He did a fantastic job, by the way. And he mentioned something that Derek Lalonde said, and Max actually put this in his article this morning as well. He mentioned that Derek Lalonde had said the Compher, Copp, Rasmussen line had come to him after the Columbus Blue Jackets game to say, hey, we play Pittsburgh next. We want the Crosby line. Like, they want to play as a shutdown line against Crosby, which, first of all, baller move. Like, that is just ice in your veins to ask for Sidney Crosby's line to shut him down. And secondly, hell yeah. Like, it worked. That line is working for Detroit. The shutdown line is actually productive for Detroit in doing what on paper they're composed to do. This might get annoying for folks because we keep talking about the same things episode after episode, but the Red Wings keep doing the same things game after game. But again, the construction of that top line, which has been, I think, probably one of the best lines in hockey of DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond.
Ryan, they have the 2 leading scorers in the NHL. You can say the best line in hockey so far.
I'm afraid someone from Vegas is going to fly in and stab me. The second part is that, like you said, and have like hammered the drum for all summer leading up to this, Brad, it has allowed you to put together that shutdown line, which is actually dangerous at both ends of the ice.
Yeah, they haven't exactly blown up the score sheet, but they've contributed some timely goals, enough offense to keep the opposition on their toes. But as we've talked about, it doesn't matter. If they can go out there and shut down Crosby and Alex DeBrincat and Dylan Larkin are popping off for 9 goals a game, who cares? You don't need the secondary offense. You're just keeping a lead at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, the offense is just a bonus. But yeah, the work they've been doing, 200 feet of the ice, has completely changed the dynamic of this team, especially when you factor in that Veleno and Sprong on the third line have also been providing offense. The fourth line has been completely irrelevant for most of this year, and it hasn't mattered because the first line is going bonkers. The third line scoring probably above average clip for an NHL third line. And you've got a second line that is taking some of the best players in the world and going, nah, not tonight. It's a hell of a formula, and not the most sustainable formula in the world.
No, but
as we've alluded to, but it's all they can do, and it's working exceptionally well for now.
And you stay with it as long as you need to. We've talked about this before, but I really like the way Derek Lalonde handles lineup decisions for the Red Wings. Of course, no fan is going to agree with every single lineup decision. Some people love when he goes 11-7, and some people don't like it. They say you should have put Berggren in right away or whatever, smaller issue. But for example, on defense, yeah, Jeff Petrie was brought in and is a veteran guy, and obviously, like, Steve Yzerman really liked him. That's why he went and brought him in. Petrie's not been good to start the year, has had no hesitation to pull him out of the lineup on a rotational basis, which you might not have seen in the past. Lucas Raymond didn't start on that top line. It was Perron with DeBrincat and Larkin. Lucas Raymond factored in after Perron wasn't really performing the best. And Raymond immediately looked good, and they've been glued together ever since. And even though Raymond hasn't been putting up points like the other two before today where he had 3, he's stayed there. That second line has stayed together. Fabbri is out for 4 weeks, which we haven't even mentioned yet. But it's not really jumbled things too much where all of the decisions that are being made lower down in the lineup, it's not moving the needle in the negative direction for Detroit because thankfully so far they've stayed relatively healthy where they've needed to. And Lalonde has made these small but precise lineup adjustments that have helped the team and stuck to them. No coach who never makes a lineup change or constantly jumbles the lineup is going to win on any kind of sustainable basis. You always need to tinker a little bit, but not too much. And I found that to start the season, he's found the right balance.
It's weird because we're so used to the blender for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And the blender came out quick this year, but it worked. And then the blender got chucked in the trash. So
yep,
it's a feel thing more than anything else, but hey, no complaints here so far.
Mentioned Robby Fabbri. It was thought that he would be out, day to day or maybe a little bit once he got hurt closer to the start of the season. Wasn't really factoring back into the lineup, and then it was announced that he would actually be out for 4 weeks. So that's unfortunate news. I mean, what else is there to say about Fabbri? It's like you don't want to harp on the guy. He doesn't like getting hurt. No player likes getting hurt. No player does it intentionally, but it's just the story of his career, and it's so annoying because that he can factor in and provide even more scoring for Detroit. Right now, Red Wings fans aren't really thinking about it because Detroit has only scored. But, if this was a different start to the season, it would sting especially more. So he's out for 4 weeks on IR. The Red Wings brought up Berggren. He didn't factor into the Ottawa game, but then they brought him in for this game. He didn't play too much, though. So that's the latest Red Wings injury update. Yeah, Berggren got 13 and a half minutes. Actually not bad. So, okay. Anything else from the Red Wings' 2 most recent games?
Other than just overwhelming happiness?
Yeah.
Yeah, not much else to add there.
Again, we're really going to have to learn how to bear with this. Like the occasional defensive breakdown. Mo Seider has looked good, not phenomenal to start the year. I think he's still finding his stride. What negatives are you going to find here?
Yeah, part of me over these last 2 episodes, stops in the middle of the episode just to think, damn, we are obnoxious. But then I remember everybody at the other end of the speakers right now is feeling the exact same way we are.
Yeah.
So they're just like, yes,
yeah.
more.
Yeah, when Brad walked in my door, like anytime the Red Wings are doing this, which isn't very often over the last decade, like we've been buzzing to start the season. Like it's so fun. It is fun for us, and we do try to measure it and temper it to make sure that folks are getting like a quality episode with like actual good analysis and breaking down the X's and O's and what have you. But don't get it twisted. We are just as excited about all of this, which is probably why I got so frustrated when people are like, oh, rah, rah, rah. You have to be angry about everything all the time. It's like, oh man, we're all here for like a universal like blip, and then we go. Just enjoy a Red Wings 5-game win streak,
I mean, Steve did kind of build an empire off of it, so maybe there's something to it.
And if anyone has been positive through the face of overwhelming cosmic irony levels of negativity, it's Steve Dangle. He just shrieked his way through it, I should say.
Not that far off what we did.
Yeah, maybe not too far off. Okay, that's the Detroit Red Wings. Again, we didn't even cover half of what we could in terms of, the Red Wings who stepped up and performed individually. So hopefully the optimism still goes, but there's nothing that can be done to take away how fantastic the start to this season has been. Okay, Grand Rapids, a little bit of an update from there. In a poor training camp and off season, anytime we were able to see Sebastian Cossa, there was some concern coming into the year, and it has to be said to start the year in Grand Rapids, like small sample size in the offseason, small sample size to start the year, he has looked outstanding. Ken Daniels talked about it in the broadcast today for Bally Sports Detroit, but Sebastian Cossa has been noted to look very, very good with Grand Rapids so far. They have a brand new goalie coach over there. I believe it's pronounced Roope Koistinen, but
nailed it.
Thank you. You're better at the Finnish names than I am.
Yep, and I will not be attempting it. Thank you.
But good start and a great sign for the Red Wings that Sebastian Cossa has started really well so far, and that folks in the organization seem really, really excited about him.
Yeah, again, everything this episode is all about sample sizes, but at least now we know he can do it at that level.
Yeah.
Because his stints in Grand Rapids last year were not good. So it's all about progression, and Cossa has a history of not being the most consistent goaltender on the planet, even when he's at his best. There's, every 4th, 5th, 6th game, whatever it would be, the meltdowns were there. So the more we can get of this, and, I can live with every 5th, 6th game being pretty bad if this is the in-between.
Absolutely. And update, actually, we have a name update. Ken was kind enough to let me know. William Wallinder. So Wallinder prefers the V instead of the W. So it looks like it's pronounced William Wallinder. So William Wallinder, he scored his first AHL goal. And Marco Kasper, actually.
Oh, no. We don't. You are not taking the same letters with different pronunciations. You are either William. You are either William Wallinder or you are William Wallinder. You don't get to have it this way. This is not one of those Sean Bean BS. He can only be Sean Bean or Sean Bond. So, William, listen up. You are William Wallinder or you are William Wallinder. They are the same letters. They make the same sounds. Get it straight.
So, William Wallinder.
No.
And then, so Wallinder scored his first goal, and Marco Kasper scored his first AHL goal. The Kasper goal was very cool. Like, showed off a really powerful stride, just like glided across the top of the circles before scoring. That was a nice little display of his, like how much force and power he can generate from down low with just a few strides. That was cool to see.
Much like Veleno, hopefully this becomes a consistent thing.
Yeah. So that's some positive news out of Grand Rapids. An additional bit of positive news, as Ken also reported today, Carter Mazur potentially back within the next week or two, which would be really, really great for not just the Griffins, but the Red Wings as well, because, you talk about future Red Wings. Obviously, Danielson's talked about a lot, Sandin Pellikka, and in the AHL, Kasper, Johansson, Edvinsson, whoever else. But Mazur, you want to be in that mix. And before he was injured, we said he might be a guy to make some noise for the Red Wings roster out of camp. So the sooner he can get healthy, playing more pro reps and factoring into those future conversations, the better. Okay, let's take some news from across the NHL. Let's look back at those standings. The Vegas Golden Knights actually have set, I believe, an NHL record, or they're tied for an NHL record with the amount of wins they have to start a season after winning the Cup. They're 6-0 to start the season. So only one of the very few who are hotter than the Red Wings, the Vegas Golden Knights.
If I had to guess, which city would handle a Stanley Cup hangover the best? Did not think Vegas would be the best at handling hangovers.
That's a been there, done that kind of thing. Like they play there all the time.
I feel like my logic is reversed on this one, that it's a place where it's practiced so often, they've perfected it.
That's exactly right. That's why other teams have the Vegas flu when they come to Vegas. Vegas plays all of their home games in Vegas, of course. They don't suffer the same fate. They've become immune.
To quote the most recent season of Shoresy, playing guilty is a performance enhancer.
Again, Boston, 4-0. It's 4 games, of course, yeah, but that's a team that knows how to win. You shouldn't bet it really against a team with Pasternak, Marchand, the goaltending they have, McAvoy, et cetera, et cetera. But how do you lose Bergeron and Krejci and still become an undeniable force in the East? That's just Boston, man.
I hate everything about Boston so much, except for their PWHL team.
Foolish.
I'm forced to like them.
Yes. Yeah, thanks to Lauren. So foolish to bet against Boston. Players having a big year so far. Jack Hughes. I mean, the Red Wings were up close and personal in game 1, but there are a lot of people saying Jack Hughes is going to be in the MVP race this year, and I don't think they're wrong to think that.
He'd probably finish 3rd right now.
Yeah, behind, I'm just guessing here, DeBrincat and Larkin.
Yeah. Good for him. 3rd place is no joke.
Yeah, in points, DeBrincat holds solo first with 12, Larkin holds solo second with 11, and Hughes and Pettersson are tied at 10. Pettersson, of course.
Wow, 2 Red Wings and a future Red Wing.
And an almost Red Wing. Damn it. Nylander, of all guys who are going to have a career year, Nylander is going to pop off, right?
Oh my God, I can't wait for Toronto to pay him $11 million a year after fans yelling they wouldn't pay him more than 8.
Yeah. Speaking of top players, McDavid out, 1 to 2 weeks with an upper body injury?
And with how Edmonton started the season, this could be their season.
That Edmonton does this a lot. Like, they constantly just need to be rescued by an unholy winning streak a third of the way into the season before they write it off. But Edmonton has started the year terribly. 1-3-1, 3 points through 5 games, and now they have lost McDavid.
And obviously losing the best player of a generation is unfortunate no matter the duration of the injury. But not to kick a dead horse here or beat a dead horse, but Ken Holland has mismanaged Edmonton's cap situation so poorly, they can only carry 18 forwards, 60, and 2 goalies because they do not have any cap space to call even a league minimum player up. So if they have one injury right now, they have to play the game short.
I know there's a big banging of the drum for, this is what the cap does to teams and blah, blah, blah. And, we have to have Alan Walsh on this show one day because he's very, very anti-salary cap, as, hockey agents are. It's their job to be.
Yeah, of course he should be.
But to me, I think you're right. Like, 31 other teams have to manage this. Like, that's a bad position to be in.
This was not sprung upon anybody. The salary cap is equal to all teams. There's a reason why Tampa and Chicago and whoever were able to wriggle their way out of jams every year because they understood the situation, they knew the parameters, and they made their decisions accordingly. So when it happens to teams and Edmonton's not the only one, multiple teams have actually had to play shorthanded this year. I think Vegas is actually one of them, but they won a cup, so who cares? You knew the rules. That it is your fault when that happens. I mean, Ottawa can't even sign Shayne Pinto. They're so up against it. And they can't even, claim any bragging rights right now. But I have no sympathy for the people who go, this is the salary cap's fault. Nope. You know the rules. You work a 9-to-5 job. If you show up at 9:15 and your boss chews you out, are you going to say, it's 9 to 5, that's restrictive? Not how the real world works, unfortunately.
And in more NHL news, did you see that Rasmus Andersson hit on Patrick Laine?
Yeah, it was brutal.
Ended up, it was a late game hit to Laine's head. Andersson, spin the wheel. I think the Department of Player Safety actually got this one right. He got a 4-game suspension, which he is appealing, I believe, and it goes to Gary Bettman. But all in all, I think that's the right suspension. But that was an ugly, ugly hit.
Yeah, headshots, I have no patience for them whatsoever. Oh, speaking of headshots, I'm going to go on a little tangent here because one of my favorite storylines that's emerging this year. How wonderful is it that most of the hockey world has already turned on Ryan Reaves?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
So funny that he is now in the Toronto glare, and it is not.
There was a stat. He played less than 8 minutes in 4 straight games, was on for a goal against in all of them, got punked by Corey Perry, and then tried saying Corey Perry wasn't tough. Ryan Reaves is so bad at this NHL thing that I have to now defend Corey Perry.
Just wash your mouth out with soap after.
Corey Perry scored the winning goal that game. Corey Perry has won an MVP trophy. Corey Perry has been one of the most notorious pests in the NHL for years. And Corey Perry had more fights than Ryan Reaves last year. And Ryan Reaves is going to call him not tough? Dude, he just clowned you the whole game. And then what was it? I think Steve actually had a great rant on his podcast. I saw one of the players on the Leafs, I don't recall which one, got dumped from behind into the boards. Really dirty hit.
Mm-hmm.
And what did Ryan Reaves do about it? Nothing. To which Adam brought up the point, well, do you want him to take a 2-minute instigator penalty and force the fight? To which the answer, and Steve so eloquently put, yes, it's his literal only job. A 2-minute instigator penalty, 5 games into the season, to send a message to the rest of the league that our stars are not to be screwed with.
And refs often will find a reason to not call the instigator.
Exactly.
If they think that it's like fair retribution based on what you just did, they'll find a way to balance it out.
Yeah. So, man, what if you ever wanted more proof that the Ryan Reaves role in the NHL is dead and useless and an active hindrance to your team? Here you go. Everything that has played out with him so far this year is your shining example.
I think there is a role for the kind of guy who will go in and punch someone else in the face when they run your best player. But I think the NHL has shown time and time again that at the absolute worst, that person has to be Klim Kostin.
Exactly the point I was going to make. If you are a competent NHL player and you do not look out of place on an NHL fourth line, absolutely. Has anybody watched Ryan Reaves play hockey in the last 3 years? It's comical. He's so bad. But he is the undeniable best fighter in the league. Although, I didn't even bring up when he was pissing and moaning that he got jumped by Arbor Jacki.
Yeah.
Dude, you're Ryan Reaves. What do you think's going to happen to you on the ice?
There's also like 20 clips of him doing the exact same thing.
I know.
Like giving the exact same amount of time to drop the gloves.
Dude, if you're going to self-proclaim yourself the heavyweight champ of the world, which, hey, don't get me wrong, Ryan Reaves is a strong dude and a hell of a fighter. You can't be a whiny bitch like he's been. You just can't. You're complaining about Arbor Jacki, who's in his, second year in the NHL?
Yeah.
You're complaining about Corey Perry, who's 100 pounds lighter and 50 years older than you. I know Ryan Reaves is pretty old too. But, man, that is just watching it all implode on itself in Toronto, of all places, is just, it's art.
Kyle Dubas would never.
No, he literally wouldn't, because he's interested in winning hockey games.
Okay. Well, it is funny to watch that happen in Toronto. I think the running high of watching such successful Red Wings hockey has made these episodes feel weird for me. Like the pacing, I just don't really know how to navigate it. But that's what it is like with this unbridled optimism. So until the Red Wings give us any reason to change, you'll see me kind of flailing to try to guide the show. On that note, let's jump into...
After 37 minutes of breaking down Alex DeBrincat's shot, we shall now move on to the next topic.
Let's jump into overtime. On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show, you get entered into giveaways, especially for the 2 Red Wings home game tickets for each Red Wings home game. The Discord, the Patreon, exclusive bonus overtime episodes, and plenty more benefits. You allow us to support the Jamie Daniels Foundation, host Wind Wheel podcast nights at the LCA, and every other initiative that we do to make the show bigger and better, including producing Expected by Whom, the latest show in our Wind Wheel podcast content universe, hosted by Prashanth Iyer and Sean Shapiro. So patreon.com/Winged podcast if you want to take the extra mile and support the show. Ryan Gannon says, not sure if the barometer of Thanksgiving still holds weight related to the standings, but where do you think the Red Wings need to be by Turkey Day to be in a favorable spot for a playoff slot? That's a really great question, and one that we haven't talked about yet. And I think we were doing this last year too, but I think the Thanksgiving benchmark is a good one. Statistically, it holds up really, really well. I know there have been some funny years around COVID, but if they are still in a playoff spot around then by all rights, like, who's to say that they're not likely to do it? Am I crazy?
Well, the stats are the stats, and the percentage isn't as high as people make it out to be, but it's still high. If they're within 2 to 3 points of a playoff spot, which with this start, it would take a pretty severe collapse to be that far out by that point, to drop 6, 7, 8 points in a month. If they're in a playoff spot, I think they're in a really good spot. I think the more interesting thing would be how congested is it? Because I could see a reality where like seeds 5 through 11 are separated by only a few points.
Yeah, if you're a playoff standings watcher, like especially early on, you're one of those sickos, look out for Detroit's Atlantic Division rivals especially, but Eastern Conference games. And every time you see someone in and around Detroit or who you think will be in and around Detroit, they have a 3-point game, so a game goes to an overtime or a shootout. That's bad. Like, you don't want that to happen because more points are being distributed. That system does drive me insane. I know the NHL won't get rid of it, but it should be a 3-2-1-0 system, like 3 points for a regulation win, 2 for an extra time win. I digress.
Good thing Detroit beat Tampa, Pittsburgh, Columbus, and Ottawa in regulation.
Yes, like all of their, like, they aren't relying on shootout wins. I know there's going to be folks saying, well, they have an unrepeatable, or you can't bank on this happening all season run good. And that is true. Like, I think the Red Wings deserve the wins that they have, but they're not, like you said earlier, Brad, they're not going to be winning at a clip of 5-1 over every 6 games for the rest of the year, of course. But as long as, like you just said, it's not the complete inverse, then the points are banked. Those 5 wins are in the bank. The 10 points are in the standings. You can't take them away. So it's cushion. It's what we were talking about earlier. If they're in a playoff spot this firmly, like, first or second divisional seeded in the Atlantic, I'm going to start singing a tune. I don't think I'd be crazy to say it. I think a lot of this hinges on some really good chemistry continuing. I think it hinges on, knock on wood, continued health. But I don't think it's nuts to talk about it. Udalali says, anyone else starting to want Gostisbehere to be extended?
Yes.
I wanted him extended like when he was signed. I was like, I want more than a year. He's great.
Correct.
I would imagine that was Gostisbehere's doing the short-term contract.
Oh, yeah, because with the way he's been playing this year, if he can keep this up for most of the year, he's getting a raise.
He's getting a raise, and whether that's with Detroit or otherwise, we'll see. But, I mean, if Detroit, we talked about winning begets winning. It's not just attracting Alex DeBrincat and other free agents to your team. It's players who are on expiring contracts who are just on your team a little bit as a journeyman. You convince them to stay, and you convince them to stay for less. If Shayne Gostisbehere is buzzing here and he gets, the kind of raise at least somewhat like he deserves, then that's the kind of thing that brings success to your team. Okay, Jack's dad says, agree or disagree? The better Cat plays, the less likely it is that Kane gets signed.
No, absolutely not. Kane, the connection to Kane with Detroit has been DeBrincat. He wants to play with his buddy. The apprehension in the Kane to Detroit rumor is he going to want to play for a 10th place team? Well, if the Red Wings aren't a 10th place team, they're a hypothetically 4th place team, I would say that makes it more likely. The question might be if the Red Wings keep this pace or they're sitting in 2nd, 3rd, 4th place in the East by the time he wants to sign, are they going to want him? Are they going to pay good money to screw with their lineup that would be working at that point?
Do you extend Gostisbehere ASAP?
you can't until January 1st, but yes, you should try.
Larkin, while playing fantastic, needs to stop whining at the refs and just play.
I don't know. I don't mind it. That's just guys getting heated. I don't mind it at all. There's like a limit, and it really depends what you're saying. But yeah, no, I don't mind it.
DeBrincat retires a Red Wing.
Yes, absolutely.
Agreed.
Number in the rafters.
We're making a sign for Thursday's Star Wars night saying, Kyle, join us on the red side. We'll sway him to request a trade to Detroit. That's awesome. Obviously talking about Kyle Connor on the Winnipeg Jets. Lastly, Jack says hi. Hello, Jack. And thank you, Dad, for supporting the Winged Wheel podcast. Next one here from Sean Trainer. Says, let's go. Time to shotgun a Verner's in a pool of poutine while listening to Journey. The Red Wings are winning the cup for the next 5 years. I will hear no other arguments. Well, that's the kind of hard-hitting analysis you come to this show for. But no, Sean, the excitement is shared. Says, in all seriousness, what a killer start to the season. Joey getting to Larkin's a top centerman in the division and Tkachuk got bullied. The vibes are great. My question is regarding the lines. Can you please explain why and how 11 forwards works? I understand with 12 forwards, you call the centerman's name and all three players jump on the ice, but what about with two players on a line? I've never played and I've never understood these small things.
So you're right about the one thing. When you're running just four straight lines, you call the centerman's name. Larkin, you guys are going. Copp, you guys are going. Veleno, you guys are going. When you run 11 and 7, this answer is as simple as you would think, Occam's razor. If, let's say, in a hypothetical world, Charnik's not playing, you got Fisher and Berggren on the fourth line. The coach would go, Copp, you're going with Johnny and Fish. Like, he'll just call the whole line. Like, you are the three that are going. All right, JT, you're taking a spin with, Johnny and Fish or whatever it is. That's literally all it is.
Yeah, they keep it simple for us defensemen.
Yeah.
Only two guys to worry about your pair. And whenever they're rotating seven guys, like that guy essentially knows he's not factoring in until he gets tapped, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a coach once who was way too aggressive with the smacking on the heads, and the more intense the game was, the more he would just like drill the back of your head. And it wasn't in a malicious way. He was just too amped up. And his son actually played on the team at one point. So it was very, very good defenseman. It went down. He went, Dad, stop. He was like, we were in the room after. He was like, I was legitimately seeing stars after how hard he smacked my helmet. Anyways. The Jack Scientist says, let's say our hot start cools off a bit, but we're still competing like this. How does that affect prospects coming up? Edvinsson should still slot in, but Cossa is performing so far, and we have three goalies. Veleno is doing well, so probably no Kasper or anyone. Are we stuck without prospects this year if this keeps up?
The reality, again, assuming health, that's probably the reality, because if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. And if Newsy is throwing out a winning lineup night after night, he will fight Yzerman to the death to not change that lineup.
Yeah, you just don't change it. The good news is for those who want to see prospects, it never, ever, 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 ever shakes out that way except for like a cup-winning team. Which if that's what Detroit ends up being at the end of the season, then by God, that is absolutely not a problem. But there will be injuries. Guys will cool off. Edvinsson or someone will do well enough to kick down the door. Like, you're going to see some, it's just the degree. So if the question is, if they keep playing this well, are they going to force a change just to get the guys up? The answer is no. Brad's right. Like, you don't change a winning lineup. If the lineup wins like 2-1 in a really ugly game, or like maybe 5-4 in a really ugly game, and it was just a fluke and the other team's goalie, shot the bed more than anything else, that's a different story. That kind of winning isn't sustainable, but the Red Wings are scoring 5 goals a game right now. Are they perfect all over the ice? No, of course not. But generally, they're getting good goaltending. Generally, the penalty kill has been good. Like, generally, obviously, the power play has been great. Save for today was 0-5. They're not going to shake that up. Okay, there are plenty more comments. We are actually going to get to them for our Patreon exclusive overtime. We're going to wrap up this episode as it's getting late over here. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Winged Wheel podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome to the show. If this seems a little bit disorganized and that we don't know what to do with our hands, this is our first time too. But thank you all for tuning in. And if you're a listener of old, hey, I said it last episode. Isn't this fun? I'm glad you're experiencing this with us. Again, Winged Wheel podcast night at the LCA is on Saturday, November 4th. wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings, or go to the link in the description of the episode to get your tickets. They are running out. We'd like to thank all of our listeners, especially our name level supporters on Patreon. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Raymond's Missing Tooth, Icon, Brad's Lord and Savior, Bradley Cleveland, Glenn Brabham, Everybody Loves Raymond, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Van Conant, welcome back, brand new name level supporter of the Winged Wheel podcast, Sea Lion, Keenan O'Donohue, Yanni Burgers, Meals on Wheels, Matthew M. Rice, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Brian J. Bauer, Carl Brutanen and Aluski, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Coyote Season Tickets and Anywhere But Tempe, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, D-Town, West Side, brand new name level supporter. Thank you so much for supporting the Dub Dub Club. Exquisitine, Blue Blay Schwinslow, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joel Miranda, Kalen Wood, King Tone, Marcus, Marlon Winchester, Matt K, Cannon Fodder, The Cheesebag Army, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, more like to bring Can, am I right, fellas? Haha, who's with me? Never Go Full Kyle, R.A., Red 3, Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Scree and Lube. That's What I Appreciates About You, Walman's Elite Dancing D, Iserplan Stan, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, Adam Rose, Axel's Sandy Pelika, Big Cheese, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, Chuck Buffchest, the Tarpless Goon, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leightonen, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, D-Boss Snip Show, Frank Stanley, Ferk Houston, NHL to Portland, baby, Gene Sullivan, Griffey Boy, Henrik Robert Deeks, James Laporte, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, J.M. Rhapsody, John Evans Derogatory, John Engels, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Norris Sider. Now this looks like a job for cheesebags. Ophelia, Steven, the Hodag, the Mexanadian, the Hat 123, Winging It in San Diego, X, formerly AA Ron, and your second favorite patron. Folks, we'll talk to you midweek.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.